Hey everybody, welcome to the David Guttman podcast, CryoCon 2025 edition. We've got a really great guest here, Mark Murdock. So as I understand it, you might be one of the top 3 OGs in the entire industry. I think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. It just means I'm old.
Well, I went through it. I was looking at all Restore and iCryo and Dave Asprey and Gary Brecka and Tony Robbins podcast and all this stuff. Like you're the go-to guy. I remember what was that TV show with The Rock? We're doing. I think it was. He's an agent for pro football where they had a cryo machine.
Oh yeah.
That was probably you, if I'm right.
That was. I got to be, at the beginning of this industry when we started in 2010, and the first couple machines came in the United States. I got to be the public face because my business partner was an introvert, and he didn't want to be in front of cameras, and I'm an extrovert, so it just kind of fell to me. So it really started with him, and I just got to be kind of that public face for about the first 8 years, and be on the shows and kind of be out there, blowing the horn for the industry.
And what was it that drew you to it? I mean, was it when did the light bulb go off and be like, okay, this is something a little different?
Like most people, it was your first visceral experience. And I was a college basketball coach for 17 years, so I was always intrigued with human performance. I got out of coaching in 2010 and decided, for some insane reason, I want to start running marathons. Before that, I thought marathons were about the stupidest thing a human being could do. So I was training for a marathon. My business partner, who was my best friend growing up, said, hey, I've got this cryotherapy machine. I'd never heard of it. There was only one in the whole country, right? There was 2. There was one in California and one here in Dallas. And he said, you need to come try this thing. And I said, well, when? And he said, well, Saturday. And I said, well, I got a long run. I got 13 milers Saturday morning. I'll come in after that. It's supposed to be good for recovery, right? So I went in after a 13-mile long run, pretty beat up, had a little soleus pull in my calf that I'd been fighting. Go through this crazy chill box, we didn't know what it was.
Right.
And I get out and I'm putting on my shoes and socks and putting on my shirt, and I'm noticing that I don't have any tension in my calf. That was pretty on fire before I got in. 3 minutes, right?
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's probably psychosomatic. Like, there's no way. So I go home, mow the yard that day when my wife says, didn't you have a long run this morning? Because I never mow the yard on days I had long runs, right? I'm like, yeah, but I feel great, Later that night, I felt good enough. I put my shoes back on and went and did 5 more miles. So that was my first visceral experience with cryotherapy. And I'm not a Kool-Aid guy. I'm very skeptical, right? So I'm like, I can't tell you what's happening in my body, but something profound happened. So that's where we started really the industry, and we kind of took it from there. But that's how I got involved into not just cryotherapy, but light therapy and compression therapy and vibration and medication and nutrition and everything the industry does now with IVs and all that. It's just kind of how I got involved.
Well, so now, you're involved in when I went to your LinkedIn, you're a whole bunch of different companies. So you're basically doing distribution of all these various biohacking products?
Yeah. I'm the VP for a company called Aspen Laser. Aspen Laser has 2 brands. Aspen Laser is the class 4 medical grade laser used in musculoskeletal pain, heavy in chiropractic, but it's also in wound care, diabetic wound care, traumatic brain injury. That's now branched into all cognitive decline, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And then Theralite is our whole body light bed brand, which we launched whole body light into the, cryo space in 2015. And that's our systemic wellness. Now we're hitting every cell in the human body. We're not looking for an area of pain. We're looking for the entire body, all cellular function, all mitochondrial response.
Sure.
So that's still VP for them. Then I have a new brand called Backhug, which is I'm the U.S. distributor for a device that's the world's first fully robotic automated spinal physiotherapist. So it's a cross between a chiropractic and adjustment and the best massage you could possibly get, but it's all on the spine and on the nerves. So it's I do a lot of different things.
Now, are these products and brands finding you, or are you finding them?
They're finding me. These are people that have come to me kind of with my background and asked me if I'd like to be a part of their launch.
Okay.
My niche within a niche is really the sports world because I was a coach. I've got probably now a list of 40 professional teams in 5 different sports. I hesitate to call soccer a major sport, but I kind of think I have to. So of the 5 major sports.
Now that you got Messi, I feel like maybe,
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Down in Florida too,
That's right. Beckham did pretty well. I've got, and then about 40 Division I athletic departments as clients.
Okay.
So I source for them just like I did for kind of UFC Performance Institute. What do you want for cryo? This is the best one. What do you want for red light? This is the best one. Now Backhug is the newest device, but that goes well beyond the brands. I help a lot of people with, I don't have any financial stake in it, but I can tell people, I can honestly tell you what the best brand of this modality is.
Right.
Because I've been doing it for long enough.
Got it.
So yeah, they usually come to me and ask me, and then I decide how or if I want to be involved. I've been approached by a lot of companies that I just thought, yeah, it's probably not for me. And I like your stuff. It's just not mine, not where I want to go.
Got it. And how did you make the pivot from, hey, I'm going to be a basketball coach to I'm going to be an entrepreneur?
Actually, quite easily. I don't think there's anything harder to convince than sitting on a mom and dad's couch in their living room and saying, give me your 18-year-old son for the next 4 years and let me mentor and train him. Because coaching isn't just about basketball. Of
course.
It's, they asked John Wooden one time, well, coach, you won a national championship. It looks like you've had another successful season. His response was, I don't know that. I don't know that till 20 years from now when I see what kind of men these guys turn into. Then I'll tell you if I've had a successful season.
Yeah, they call me Coach is one of my favorite books.
Absolutely. Yeah. Phenomenal. I mean, there's nobody that ever did it better than John Wooden. And the funny thing is, there's nobody that ever focused on winning less than John Wooden.
I know. It's funny. It's funny. I feel we were talking about Cale Sanderson at Penn State and the wrestling coach there. Similar kind of thing, which is, it's funny. I went to the guy who's the head coach at Ohio State, Tommy Ryan. I wrestled with him at Iowa Wrestling Camp. We wrestled together on Long Island. Known him for a long time. And I went to, it was Penn State against Ohio State that year. Penn State was ranked number 1. Ohio State was ranked number 2. And we're in Ohio State Stadium. And every time a Penn State guy would win, they'd seem like they took a Xanax.
Yeah.
Every time an Ohio State guy would win, they'd go nuts.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and when you see the interviews, they're like, hey, I just went out there and did my best. I'm just trying to have fun.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you say that and John Wooden too, like he had those 4 years that he won with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but the rest of his teams, they didn't really have stars.
Yeah.
They had all
regular guys.
Yeah, regular guys.
Yeah. No, so that kind of led me into it. So when you have that experience, what I did for 17 years and managing, talk about different personalities, socioeconomic backgrounds, cultures. I had kids from, Brazil and Lithuania and Belgium and France and Africa and all over the United States.
Right.
You got to meld those teams together. So I wouldn't say I'm an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur loves the risk of make a million, lose a million. That freaks me out. Okay. I'm a manager, leader, and a coach. So I coached for 17 years, and then I've just taken that in 15 years in human performance and biohacking and done the same thing. I just manage, lead, and coach teams. That's what I like to do.
And do you have children?
I do. Yep.
How old, if you don't mind me asking?
30. My oldest is 30. He's getting married next weekend.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
He's actually a financial planner under the Northwestern Mutual umbrella for a company called Sparks Financial here in Fort Worth, and he's actually my financial advisor, which is kind of odd.
Nice.
And then my younger one works for me. He's 26.
Okay.
So both the boys are
25-year-old daughter. But my experience too is like, look, I not to add too much in my background, but when I was 24, I was misdiagnosed with terminal cancer and told I had 6 months to live.
Wow.
And up to that point, I think I was a decent guy, but it definitely made me a better person for sure, because turned me into a servant leader. And what I think is the right leadership management style is the same as a coaching style, is the same as a parenting style. It's the same thing.
For sure.
The techniques are slightly different, but not that different.
Yeah, you have to have a servant's heart. I mean, there's, like I said, I people say, oh, you're an entrepreneur, because I've had, multiple Inc. 5000 companies. Like, I'm not an entrepreneur at all.
Right.
I'm a manager leader, and I try and do it with a servant's heart. What's my job? It's to serve my staff and empower them to go serve our clients. And if, one of my favorite strategies is the strategy of preeminence with Jay Abraham, right? It's how do you become your client's most trusted advisor? Not how do you sell them something. It's once you become the status of most trusted advisor, the funny thing is they start asking you questions that go beyond why they're your client.
Right.
They don't ask you business questions anymore. They ask you marital advice,
right.
parenting advice,
right.
what car they should buy.
Right.
Like then you've kind of established yourself as their most trusted advisor.
Right.
The selling flows out of that.
Right.
But it really starts with servant leadership, for sure.
Yeah, let it be the side effect, not the goal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I like Jay Abraham so much. That's the strategy, which he just got it from Proverbs, right? It's just biblical. It's servant leadership, and he just overlaid a business strategy on it, but that's what it is.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'm taking you're a person of faith?
I am, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you always been, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, with a Christian home, and made that decision for myself when I was 11 years old. To dedicate my life to Christ and kind of walk that path. And it's been a joy to watch, marry somebody that believed that, and watch both my sons who are better men than I will ever be to make those same decisions and walk with the Lord. So it's been a joy to me.
That's nice. They might say differently, but that's it's interesting. I consider myself a very spiritual person. I have not been able to find faith, though I have searched and continue to search. We'll see how that plays out. It does seem interesting. Life just keeps continuing to put people of faith in my path, which I don't know. I feel like there's something there. I don't know.
Divine appointments. There's no accidents.
Yeah. It certainly feels that way.
Yeah, good.
Well, so I'm curious about what you look for when you're looking to bring people onto your team, having the management and leadership style that you do. Maybe what are the things that you really look for, and maybe what are the things that you're like, hey, if I see that, I'm out. I'm not hiring that person.
Yeah, competitiveness. Same thing when why we've had such great employees, and why I had, in 17 years of coaching, I had 9 All-Americans. Okay. So in college basketball, over the breadth of most coaches' careers, they'll never have a single All-American. It's just a numbers game, right? There's 360 Division I teams, and there's only 15 All-Americans every year, 5 first team, 5 second team, 5 third team. You're never going to have an All-American. I had 9 in 17 seasons. So I can find talent, but what I really looked for was competitiveness. I wanted them not just to compete in basketball. I wanted them to compete in the weight room. I wanted them to compete in the classroom. I wanted to compete in government student leadership at their high school or junior college. Like, I wanted them to look at all of life as a competition. So when I got into business, I just hired ex-athletes because they knew how to compete. They knew how to blend socioeconomically with people that were not like them, that did not believe the way they believed or agree with the things they agreed with, but put together and work as a team. But and those were things I really looked for: competitiveness and did you play a team sport? I actually stayed away from individual sport athletes. Golf, tennis, track. They tend to be very solo and very goal-oriented for themselves, but not really work inside of a team.
Yeah, wrestling's that way too. I mean, wrestling is much more an individual sport than a team sport, for sure.
And then the things I stayed away from, same thing. When I was either recruiting a basketball player, and we talked about his high school coach, or I was recruiting an employee and they talked about their past boss. If it was consistently negative, I wasn't going to touch them. Because that was going to happen to me as the boss eventually, right? People don't change once they're adults. They just shift places and do the same thing they did before, right? I'm under no illusions that adults, once you've reached the age of 20, 21, that you're going to make any material changes the rest of your life. Outside of a massive spiritual experience or traumatic experience, right? That's when people make these changes as adults. So I kind of believed what people showed me what they were when they showed me what they were. And if they were super critical of their coach or their boss, I don't care what they graded out, and I probably was going to look somewhere else.
Oh, I have a question about the competitive aspect, because there's a competitive aspect where you're never happy unless you beat everybody else, versus being competitive with yourself. I see those as different. Like, I'll tell you, the 2 best wrestling matches I ever wrestled, I lost both. But these are guys that should have mopped the floor with me, and they were close matches. Right?
Some of the best games I ever coached, we lost. For sure.
So I'm curious, like, whether it's more that internal competition or it's I got to beat everybody else.
Yeah, I don't believe the results are up to me. I really believe that control is an illusion, whether that's coaching or business or personal life. It's an illusion. We have very little control. What we can control is our attitude. What we can control is our effort. So when I looked at my competition level, I never looked at competition, and still don't, as my enemy. I looked at them as they're there to make me better. Because if they raise the bar, I have to raise the bar. They have, in essence, helped me get better as a person or as a competitor. So I look at that in a very healthy way, and I'm not out there ripping people and ripping competition and looking at them as I'm not going to have dinner with them. Like, please get better. It makes me better. But at the end of the day, do I control whether I beat them or not? No, I don't control results. Look, in coaching, if your players are sick, if they have a bad game, if the other team is great, if the referees get involved, right? There's so many things you can't control. Once you start that game, my job is done in practice. So the same thing in business. My job is done with coaching my team, but once I send them out to do what they're going to do, sales or service or whatever they're going to do, really the control is out of my hands anymore. So I'm competitive in that I want to out-effort you. I want to outwork you. I want to outthink you. I want to outmaneuver you. But the results are going to fall where the results are going to fall. I've been blessed to have won a lot. But I can honestly tell you, I've learned a lot less from wins than losses. I learned way more from losses. What do you get when you don't get what you want? You get experience, and that is very valuable. And I think in any business, if you look at the people who are at the top, the apex predators in every modality, every business, and every kind of business, they can tell you a litany of failures, right? Abraham Lincoln failed 31 times before he was elected president.
Right.
The reason he was elected president is because he failed 31 times.
Right.
We have a culture now that looks at adversity wrong. They look at adversity as what they have to overcome, and it's not fair.
Right.
No, adversity is your blessing. Adversity is going to drive you to success. The roadblocks are there to make you achieve those things, but that's not where our culture is these days. Our culture looks at adversity, throws up their hands and says, it's not fair, make it fair. Make it artificially fair for me because I have these things in front of me. I'm like, go through those things. Like I didn't bail my sons out of things that they struggled with. I just let them fail and struggle because that's the blessing. To take that away from them would be unfair.
It's funny you say that. I remember I was on a podcast with a woman who's a psychologist, probably shouldn't be, and she's asking me all these questions about, this injury or, this, personal wound or whatever it might be. And I was like, there's nothing that's occurred to me in my life that I frame as an injury.
Not one.
They're just things that happen.
That's right.
And kind of what you were saying is, I can trace none of my good qualities to good things that happen in my life. I can only trace them back to hardships, things I had to overcome. Sure. So one of my questions, and you just brought it up about your children, about your sons, is I think one of the hardest things as a parent, and I'm really curious to see how you think about it, is how much suffering do you allow your children to experience? Because your knee jerk is none.
That's right.
But then like you said, you're robbing them of their ability to develop. And so how do you think about that?
I had a really good personal experience with my dad. I had gone to college for 6 semesters. I was 6 semesters in at Texas A&M. I'd never had above a 2.0. I was having a great time in college.
I bet.
Wasn't going to class a lot. Right. Wasn't studying. Sometimes I'd forget I had a class. So literally 6 straight semesters. Usually after 2 semesters below a 2.0, they kick you out. Right. I could talk my way back in. Okay. And the 6th semester of going into that, he said, Mark, if you don't get above a 2.0, you can pick wherever in the country you want to live. They're going to kick you out of college for good, and I'm going to hand you the note to your student loan. I'll give you $200 cash and a plane ticket to where you want to live, but you're not living with me. Okay. But if you get above a 2.0, I'll keep paying for your college and I'll buy you a brand new car. So I had all the external motivation in the world. I went that semester and pulled a 0.5, 2 Ds and 2 Fs.
Damn.
So my dad drove me to the airport, gave me $200 cash and a ticket back to Dallas. I lived in Florida at the time, and handed me the paperwork to pay off my student loan. And years later, he told me he sat in the parking lot and cried for an hour. It's the best thing he could have ever done for me. Because if he'd have kept paying that bill, I'd have kept cashing it in. So I learned really early on that you need to let your kids struggle, because that's where I really grew up. Went back to college, graduated with honor, got a master's degree, graduated with honor, because I was paying for it myself. Right? So that led me into this lifetime of how I coached my players and how sometimes I let them go through failure and struggle with things. Right. And then raising my sons, how I just didn't intervene times. I just let them struggle, and it sometimes fail, and sometimes it was hard. And it's hard to separate yourself as a parent and let your kids struggle and suffer. But I think it's up to a point, I think it's necessary. So that was a lesson I learned, as a 19, 20-year-old kid that has stuck with me now. I'm 57. And that's the kind of when people ask me for parenting advice, I say, I don't have much, but I'll tell you this. And I tell them that story. And I say, your kids don't need you to be the best friend. They need you to be their parent. My boys are now, at 30 and 26, my best friends. There's nobody I'd rather spend time with than my sons, but not when they're 12 years old or 15 or 18.
Right. Wow, that's a great story. Amazing. So I'm curious, did you have a coach, growing up that you modeled yourself after? Like, where did your coaching, philosophy come from?
Yeah, a lot of them a hybrid of coaches. Starting from Pop Warner and Little League and all the things you go through in high school. Just you got some good coaches and some bad. They're not all great. Right. But you learn from all of them. And then my mentor was the first guy named Bob Flickner, who was at a junior college here in Dallas for over 20 years. And I was his assistant for 4 years. And that was my first real mentor as a coach. And I learned from him everything I knew about coaching and leading men and life as it related to college basketball was learned from him. And then he retired. We won a national championship together. And then he retired. And I became the head coach. And then from there, I went on to NCAA Division II for 9 more years and did that. But really started with Bob Flickner. And, just to watch him, I can honestly say in the 4 years I worked for him, I never saw him raise his voice one time. Maybe one time I saw him get angry. Never heard him curse. And I never saw him yell at a player. His players played hard for him and would run through brick walls because they loved him so much. Now, he wasn't weak. He was very stern. He would, if you did it wrong, get on the line, get on the line, get on the line. There was no give or take. But he never had to yell or scream. And I worked for some other guys that were the exact. They were yellers and screamers and ball throwers and dog cussers. And they motivated you by fear. So I always tend to hope I was more towards the first mentor that I had and did that. And at the end of my career, I actually did kind of fade away and got a little twisted and became more of that kick the ball rack over, throw a basketball against the wall, scream at the guys at halftime. And that's really why I got out of coaching in 2010, because I was sliding into becoming something I didn't want to become. And the funny thing was, for 15 years, doing it the way Bob showed me to do it, we won. And the last 2 years, when I kind of became more aggressive and did it my way, we lost.
If you don't mind me asking, why do you think that? Again, because you'd had success. I got to believe, and I also have to believe it's more pleasant to be the other way than the more aggressive way.
Yeah, your family sure likes you better. I bet you're that way, and you sure look in the mirror a little easier. I think fear is a good short-term motivator, but only in very short term. You can't build what you need to build. The book Positive Coaching, I think, is a really great book. Even at the pro level, Phil Jackson used some of the tenets of positive coaching, where you're always using positive reinforcement, and you're not losing your temper, and you're not disciplining out of anger, and all those things that cross over with parenting. I think the respect factor, you'll play harder for somebody that you respect, and at the end of the day, can yell at you if they need to, but they're doing it because they want the best out of you and they love you. At the end of the day, the yelling is the yelling, but I've got your back. When you have a coach or a business or an owner or a boss that's just angry all the time and yelling, doesn't have a personal relationship with you, doesn't know your wife's name or your kids' names or where you're from or any of those details, when they yell at you, they don't have your best intent. You're just getting in the way of something they want to achieve, and they're taking it out on you. That's a different motivating factor. And the generation that we have now didn't grow up the way we grew up. They're not motivated as the 80s kids were of, make as much money as you can, be successful, build your empire. They want things like more time off, more meaningful relationships. They're not so concerned about the salary you pay them as how much input they have into your company. Like, they're looking for different things than we look for growing up. So I think managing that way, where you have a deep relationship with your staff or your team or whatever it is you're managing, goes much further than just this angry tyrant who keeps people on the edge all the time because they're afraid. People will perform in the short term when they're afraid, but not in the long.
There's no doubt that, and again, I think the same thing is true in parenting. You'd rather your kid do something because they don't want to disappoint you versus they're afraid of your wrath.
Absolutely.
Right, same thing. But back to my question that I don't quite think you answered. Okay. I'm really only because I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. So you have this career where you're doing really well. You're coaching with the style of your old mentor and coach that you coached and won a national championship with. And then you had a couple years where you didn't do that. Why do you think you made that shift when it had gone so well?
Pride. Okay. I can tell you the exact game it happened.
Okay.
My first year at Adams State, we're a Division II school. We got paid $30,000 to go play Arizona on national TV.
Okay.
Arizona. Right, Division I.
Yeah.
National contender. They have 3 lottery players on the floor. Chase Budinger, who goes in the first round, the lottery pick. Jordan Hill, a 7-footer, who's a lottery pick. And then Jared Bayless, a freshman point guard who plays 1 and then goes to the NBA. 3 guys on the lottery. I don't have anybody over 6'5" on the floor. We lead most of the first half. They're supposed to beat us by 40. Right. That's why they're paying us to come in there and take a beating. They go up 20. We cut it back to 5 with 5 minutes left in the game. And Kevin O'Neal, who was a former college and NBA coach, is coaching them. He calls his last time out. And we're only down 5 with 5 minutes to go, but we're winning the game, right? We're not supposed to be within 30. And I remember looking down at that bench and in my brain thinking, 2 years from now, I'm going to have that job. And that was the beginning of the fall. The hubris and the pride that welled up in me about me. And from then on, the next 2 years, everything I did in coaching was not about those players anymore. It was about me and getting to the Division I level and being successful. And I had a complete paradigm shift, and it cratered me. It cratered me with my wife, with my kids, with my players, with my administration. I just became that coach you see on TV that's out of control, that's angry all the time, and his players hate him. And for the last 2 years, that's what I did. And then 4 games left in my last season, We were really, really bad again for the second year in a row, and I knew I was going to get fired. I was either going to get fired or quit because I was done. And I apologized to my wife and sons. I apologized to my whole team. And I said, I don't know what the last 4 games is going to have for us. We'd won like 12. We lost like 12 in a row. We were terrible.
Right.
And I said, but I'm going to go back and do it the way that I've always done it and the way I should do it. We win the last 4 games.
Wow.
Teams that beat us by 30
right.
the first time we beat. First team we beat was Mesa State, who was 15th in the country. They beat us by 35.
Right.
We beat them.
Wow.
Win the next one, win the last 4. And then I ended up getting fired anyway, because we had a terrible year. Yeah. But just kind of those last 4 games, I went back to how I'd done it for 15 years. And even though I left kind of on a low note with my last 2 years of being losing seasons, I know why, and I know that paradigm shift. It was kind of a gift that I got back in those 4 games. Like, this is the way you've always done it.
Right.
You did it, and this was the result.
That is so well. I would argue that those 4 games is you left a success, even though you still got fired. What I would say though is, my other point of curiosity is, what was it before those last 4 games? There must have been some trigger that made you realize, oh, I had this wrong.
Yeah, my family.
Yeah, was it like your wife or one of your kids sat you down or something?
They just had enough.
Yeah.
They'd had enough. I was frustrated all the time. I was on edge all the time. I was missing a lot of games. My oldest, Will, at the time was a freshman in high school and playing 3 varsity sports.
Right.
And I missed over half of baseball, basketball, football. I wasn't seeing anything.
Yeah.
And then when I was there, my mind was somewhere else. Yeah. I was taking recruiting trips in the summer that my assistant coaches could have taken, but I just took them because I was addicted to the pattern. Yeah. And I was gone needlessly. And I think they just had enough. And my wife said, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, that's because my question was going to be, how did you pivot back? But now I know the answer. You had those last 4 games, and so that makes so much sense. Well, so going back to to what you do now, right? And the kind of coach and leader that you are, I'm really curious to because there's so much. I was just walking the floor last night here at CryoCon. I mean, there's so much new equipment and gadgetry coming out all the time, and I'm a pretty healthy guy. I take pretty good care of myself. I'm keto most of the time. Yep. I usually only eat 1 meal a day.
I'm the same way.
It's like, and honestly, it's so overwhelming. And I feel like sometimes I'm like, man, I just want the 80-20 rule. Yeah. Like, give me the 20% that's going to give me 80% of the benefit. You're in the weeds. Yeah. Like, you tell me. Like, I would love to hear your point of view about what's that 20%.
You've already said it. We had this conversation last night with me and a couple of the Cryo-Built guys, and we know some of these companies have known each other for a long time. And we said, look, if people just ate the way they're supposed to eat and got the rest and exercise they're supposed to get, we'd all go away. None of us would exist.
Right.
The reason our companies exist is because people don't want to live the way they're supposed to live.
Right.
And they want either a pill or a session or a modality to make up for the consequences that they don't want to face.
Right.
But if we just ate the way we're supposed to eat, got plenty of sunshine, plenty of rest and water, did things like intermittent fasting and stayed away from refined carbohydrates and sugars and crud, most of these companies wouldn't exist because we wouldn't need them, right? I mean, it's sad to say, and we had a wellness center for 8 years here in Dallas, and I always felt like we needed a sign above the door or on the door handle itself, so you had to see it said, if you're not serious about nutrition, don't walk in this door, right? Because what I was telling my players in coaching is, you can work out for 3 hours in the gym, you can be on the basketball floor for 3 hours, you can do an hour of shooting, but I can't overcome bad nutrition. No amount of exercise can overcome bad nutrition. So what you put in your fuel tank is going to have more impact than how much time you spend in the gym. So if we just did those things, I think that's 90% of it.
So I agree with most of what you said, but the only part that I think is harder is, I think just because of how screwed up our food supply is.
Completely. Yeah.
That eating healthy is
not the same.
Really hard.
An ear of corn doesn't have the same nutrients it did 50 years ago.
Right.
Not even if it has any. Right. It's completely the soil and it's just completely
like a strawberry.
different.
I'm like, this looks like a strawberry, but it doesn't taste like one.
No. We're not imagining things when we say this doesn't taste like it tasted when I was a kid.
Right.
A Coca-Cola does not taste. I saw the ingredients for Gatorade in 1976, I think, when it came, because I was in Florida. Florida Gators were a big deal. When I saw the ingredients for Gatorade, had 4 ingredients. The ingredients for Gatorade now is 22 ingredients.
Oh my God.
And none of them are things you know what they are.
Right.
It's completely transformed. I know Gatorade tasted different because I could look at the labels and see why it tasted different.
Right.
Coca-Cola tasted different. Corn, all meat, it was all different. So you're right, it is difficult. So I use these things. I have a red light bed in my house, and I have a Theralite in my house, and I have back hug, and I do intermittent fasting because I need more. I have to work harder at it than people used to work 50 years ago. If you see people on beaches in this country 30 years ago, there's nobody that's out of shape.
Right.
Like not everybody's Charles Atlas.
Right.
Dating myself with that reference, right?
Yeah, we're about the same age. I know the reference. Back in comic books.
It looks like a paradise of human beings. Like, oh, these are the healthiest people I've ever seen. Who are these people? Well, it was us, which is not that way anymore. So, but I think that we add these modalities. For me, I don't add it because I want that extra burst. I'm 57. But I want to be a biological age a lot younger than that. And I want to perform quality of life. I want to still be playing golf when I'm 80. I see some guys playing 80-year-olds playing golf right now, but I'm like, I don't want to play like that. Like, I don't want to, that looks like suffering. But I see 80-year-old guys that have lived their lives right out there hitting it just as far as I hit it in my 50s. So I want that. I want quantity of life. I don't control when I die. I get hit by a bus tomorrow. I know where my eternity is spent. I'm not worried about that. But I am worried about the quality of my life while I'm here. And I want to be as vigorous as possible.
It's funny, I used to do, I was a pretty competitive age grouper triathlon in my early 20s. And had you ever done triathlon before?
No, just I did 15 marathons.
Okay, well, so one of the things they do is they write your age on your calf in every race. So every person you pass and every person that passes you, you know exactly how old they are. Now, I was doing mostly Olympic distance races, and I was fast. Like I would run a 10K at the end of a Olympic distance race in 36 minutes. So I'm running a 5:45 pace, something like that. Every race I did, there was some dude in his 70s that would blow by me like I was standing still.
It's shocking.
And I'm like, he started like 6 age groups behind me. And he just blew past me, and I'm fast. And I'm like, I got to be that guy. It's like every time I see, you see it all the time when you're flying. The elderly people in the wheelchairs get on first, and I'm just like, my wife's a good bit younger than me. I'm like, if that's ever me, just take me out back.
I told my
put a bullet in my brain,
push me off a bridge.
It's like I don't ever want to be that way.
But I think that's why this generation too looks at money different than we looked at money growing up, and why they're focused on other things. This generation under 30 right now spends more on alternative healthcare than any generation before them, but they're also making less money than any generation before them.
Right.
Because what they've seen is their parents and grandparents age poorly, and the last 10, 15 years of life be institutionalized and not be able to take care of themselves.
Right.
And they know one thing, they're not gonna go out like that. So you have to give credit to that generation that they're driving tiny, small cars, living in tiny houses, taking more trips, spending more money on good quality food and experiences, rather than on the latest, greatest 5-bedroom house or 3 swimming pools or whatever that we thought that used to mean. So kudos to them, but it's because they've seen our parents and grandparents age so poorly, and at least they know, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to end up where I can't take care of myself for 15 years. That's not living.
What's the coolest new technology that you've seen, that maybe the jury's still out on it, or, is there anything you're evaluating now and looking at?
Well, I mean, our back hug is only 2.5 months into the, market. That's brand new. Nobody's ever seen it. It's a robotic spinal physiotherapist. Nobody's ever seen that before. And it gives feedback because it uses sensitive fingertips, the static EMG in the fingertips.
And is it a consumer device that you buy yourself, or is it more you?
It's mostly B2B, but I sell it to consumers as well. It's
what's the price tag on it?
It's about $20,000.
A
business can revenue share it. They don't have to buy it. Instead, they can buy it for $20,000, or they can revenue share it for $2,500. And then they make 75% of the revenue every month. I keep 25%. That's a revenue share. But people buy it in their homes. They can do that. It's a combination of a chiropractic adjustment and a 90-minute massage, all in 10 or 20 minutes.
Is there one of those here?
There is. I've got 2 of them here.
I want to check it out.
You should try
it.
Especially if you're a wrestler. You will.
I got all kinds of neck problems, man. All kinds of neck problems.
I'm preaching your love language, that machine. That's a cool technology. I mean, there's so many things out on the market that are good. I still tend to go towards the things that track data, right? I want to see, we get the subjective result. We know when we eat better and work out and do modalities, we feel better.
Sure.
But how much better are we getting? So I like things that track. I like things that either through a blood test or a saliva test or through some metric. That's why I like, the Whoop ring, the Whoop bands and the Aura rings, and that are tracking. As rudimentary as are, at least you're getting some score. You're getting some improvement. You see some decline or incline. I like things that track. So it's, there's just so much out there. Every time I come to a conference like this or a biohacking or see it come out, there's just the AI part I enjoy at some level, but some of it freaks me out.
Oh, dude, it's
I think
crazy.
I have a brain for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'd rather write my own emails and write my own my own paragraphs and my own marketing video, and I'd rather make my own sales calls.
Right.
But there are people out there now that are using fully automated AI to make sales calls, send and deliver contracts to people, and they do an entire sale of a device or a good or service with no human being.
It's crazy.
That's not me. I'm never gonna, knock on wood, right? I'm never gonna do that.
It is interesting. Like, I don't know that there's anyone that will ever write a term paper again. I mean, it would be almost crazy to write. I mean, that's only happened in the last couple of years.
And I don't, we know with our muscles, you use it or you lose it. Same thing with your brain.
Yeah.
Don't stop using your brain. Don't let AI do it for you. Do I get I use AI in the back hug. We use some graphic. It's not a human being. It's a static EMG measurement, and it's measuring and reflecting a mirror back to them of where they started and where they are at the end of the session. So I get that part of it. I like the automation and the robotics. But where we take away the human brain and let a computer do it, I'm probably never going to be fan. Plus, I've seen Terminator. I know how that ends. It's not good.
Skynet's not good.
Skynet is bad. But yeah, I would hope that my grandchildren knew how to talk face to face with people and shake a man's hand and write a term paper and send their own emails and make their own calls.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're never going to be able to connect at a human level the way you can with a customer or a prospect, the way a computer program would do that. It's always going to be sales-based, not emotional.
Well, and like you said, I mean, you talked about the trust aspect, but people buy from people they like and trust. And I think one of the things that's happened here over the last, certainly since the whole Trump effect, is people just don't trust institutions anymore. And what happened in COVID, rightfully so. And so now it's like, well, okay, I don't trust institutions at all. I don't trust Harvard. I don't trust, the government for sure. I don't trust the CDC. I don't trust any of that.
Yeah.
So who am I going to trust? I'm going to trust you.
That's right.
Because you've never lied to me.
That's right.
Joe Rogan's never lied to me. It's like that's why people the personal brands are so powerful.
That is the strategy of preeminence. That is becoming someone's most trusted advisor. It's very hard to attain. You can lose it in a second.
Yeah.
If you tell one lie,
it's over.
If they catch you, you lose it forever. You cannot gain it back. So the right answer is don't make one up if you don't know.
Yeah.
You tell them, I don't know the answer to that. Let me find out. But what the human response is to immediately throw something out there just to get through the moment.
Yeah.
And if it's got a kernel of truth to it, but that's not all true, you're going into dangerous territory.
No, you're 100% right about that. How important do you think, conferences like this are for, for people that are, either they're building businesses themselves or they're just interested personally?
Huge. I like conferences like this, but I also like really small, unique, intimate masterminds. I'm in a chiropractic mastermind called Ultimate Achievers Club. It's about 150 chiropractors from around the world that would probably be the top 1% to 2% in chiropractic wage earners and business size, because most of them are multiple clinics, or 60 locations, or 10 or 50, but just sitting in that group 4 times a year. We have 4 meetings a year, 4 weekends where we do events, and just listening and learning, even if I didn't say a word, just gleaning the information and mistakes they've made and successes they have, and having dinner and doing life with those people and learning from them. These are becoming some of my best friends in the world, but I'm learning so much. I don't even have to contribute anything. I mean, if I do, I do, but I don't have to. I come back and I go, for the next 3 months, I have like 5 action items I can take out of what I've learned. The Remarkable Practice is TRP is another group like that. It's bigger, but it's still that same. It's a mastermind group. So conferences like this for networking, connecting, we used to think of that as networking so I can look at everybody as a prospect to sell to.
Right.
No, it's networking is who can teach me what I don't know. Who can come alongside me and partner with me? Who can tell me when I'm doing it wrong? Who's my accountability partner? Who's going to call me? Because I have to call them once a week and show them my books and show them my reviews and show them my business, and then say, hey, you said you weren't going to do that anymore. You're still doing that. Stop doing that. Or you said you were going to start this and implement this. That was 3 months ago. You haven't implemented it. you're going to be in this accountability group, you better start implementing. That's why we're here. So those events like this are worth their weight in gold. Yeah, you get friendships and social and all that, but it's really who builds into you over the next year between those annual conferences or meetings that you have, and who do you partner with, and who does something that you'd like to do in your business but does it better than you, that you may not just try and recreate what they do, but you may just bring them on board to do that thing, right? Because everybody makes mistakes and not everybody's perfect, and I don't do all things well, right? So I need people that do those things that I want to add. I need them to come in and do them and partner with in that way. So I think these are invaluable. I don't think they happen enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I've got 3 biohacking events in the last, probably 6 weeks, and boy, huge difference too in like ones that are well run and ones that are not well run. I mean, this one has been great. I do want to wrap up with a personal question, if you don't mind, and only because of the conversation we've had. I'm just curious to hear your answer. So, flash forward 20 years from now, what would you like your sons to say about you? You're still around.
He loved the Lord as God with all his heart, with all his soul, with all his mind. That's the best thing I could have. Because that's what I say about my dad. My dad passed this summer at 79. It was very sudden. And in all my dad's life, I never saw him afraid. Doesn't mean he wasn't, I just never saw it. Everything he did, he related back to Scripture. And one thing that made an impact on me, even as a little kid, I never saw my dad look at another woman, not even once. Wow. I remember as a 10, 11-year-old kid driving down the highway in Florida with billboards of women on bikinis and suntan oil, and my dad would actually, he didn't say anything, but the sign would be on this side of the road, and I'd see him divert his eyes until we passed the sign, and then he'd bring him back to center. And he was a good-looking man, and I'd go to the gym with him, and women would flirt with him, and he didn't respond at all. He just ignored it. Wow. So those were the things that I would like my kids to say about me, because that's what I say about my dad. He was just a great model. He didn't preach at me. Sometimes he did, because I was kind of a screw-up when I was early, right? When I was flunking out of college. Right. He just lived it. And I'd like my sons to say that. That'd be awesome.
Mark, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.